Hello, welcome to Financial Insider Weekly. I'm Michael Gray, your host, and my guest today is Gregory Carpenter, and Greg is the Managing Director for BTI Group Mergers and Acquisitions, a business brokerage firm located in San Jose, California, and he's been a business sale intermediary since 1985, almost 30 years. And the current focus of his business is on the middle market or so, valued from 1 million to 50 million. He was on the board of directors for the California Association of Business Brokers for 9 years. He is a frequent speaker about how to sell a business. He is an arbitrator for the California State Bar and the Santa Clara County Bar Association. And Greg says that he has a great home in Incline Village at Lake Tahoe that he doesn't get to use very much. So, but you know, if you'd like to rent a vacation home.
Well, thanks for the plug.
There you go. So today, Greg and I are going to be talking about buying a business. And Greg was just telling me he's interested in people who are interested in buying a more significant business, again, you know, from 1 million and up. But we're going to talk about the subject in general. So, Greg, what are some reasons that people do buy businesses?
The main reason people buy businesses is they want to be in control of their own fate. Mm-hmm. They don't want to have to report to anybody. They want to make their own decisions. They want to be rewarded in proportion to the value they create. Mm-hmm. Sometimes this is a voluntary decision that they plan for, and sometimes they find that they've run out of other alternatives. But in any case, the underlying motivation is generally control.
Okay. Now, again, I'm thinking of the type of business that you're interested in getting involved with. So I would think that a lot of these larger transactions would be people thinking about expanding a business. Is that right?
That's true. Well, let's put it in context. When we say larger, if you think about the range of business sizes, you can start with what we call the lower Main Street businesses that are the little mom and pop shops, like a little deli or a one-off retail store, or a small service business with a couple of employees. And these things typically are basically buying yourself a job, and you earn as much as you would as an employee, yet you're stuck with all the risks and the responsibilities of running the business. As businesses get a little bit bigger, you'd have to have a pretty good job to replace the income they would provide. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about businesses that may have earnings of, say, $400,000 or $500,000 a year, up to a couple of million a year. Now, these may sound large to someone who hasn't really considered being in business before, but these are businesses that individuals can buy every day. Okay. An example might be a small manufacturing company, a machine shop, a service business with a couple dozen employees. A chain of retail stores, a chain of delis, a chain of franchises, maybe even just 2 or 3 units of a franchise food service business.
Like a 7-Eleven, something like that.
Well, not 7-Elevens, because they don't really let you own much of anything. You're just literally buying yourself a job. But other similar franchises. Okay. So, and these businesses will provide $500,000 to $1 million a year of income, and the difference is, of course, that the owner is going to be managing them. So a lot of times people will save up their money in corporate America. They'll maybe get some stock options, or they'll get some good bonuses, and then they'll go out and they'll buy 1 or 2 or 3 small businesses and make themselves the owner of a upper Main Street business, or maybe even you might become a lower middle market company. When you get to this stage where your earnings are above $1 million, then the buyers for these businesses the day you go to sell will more likely be corporations that are trying to aggregate a bunch of small businesses into one big one, or even private equity firms. So they're not really that big when you think about it. If a business is earning $500,000, it might sell for anywhere from $1 million to $2.5 million, and you can get SBA financing for this for 75% of the purchase price. So you don't necessarily have to have millions of dollars to get a business that earns millions of dollars over a couple of years.
Good. Okay. So some people, this may be more of an issue of a year or so ago, but maybe you're still seeing it. Maybe I'll just ask the question: what about people who became unemployed as a result of the Great Recession? Maybe there's still some downsizing that's going on. I see some things, Cisco or whoever making announcements. Are you seeing people like that? And is buying a business a good solution for them?
Well, we're really not seeing very many people like that anymore.
Okay.
What we're seeing is a lot of bad traffic on the freeway because everybody's got a job.
Well, that's better news, I guess, for our local economy.
Yeah, we're seeing some, but if you go back to 2008 to 2010 period, we were flooded with people who were looking to buy a small business to replace the income from the job they couldn't get anymore.
Okay.
That's not so much the case anymore. Jobs seem to be pretty plentiful.
That's
and the people that we see coming in to buy businesses are ones that have made a career of owning businesses and are looking for the next business, or have saved up their money and they want to move out of corporate America so they can be in charge of their own destiny.
Okay. So we're seeing now people operating more from a place of strength than desperation that we've seen in the past.
I would say that's true.
Yeah, which again, for the buyers, that's good news because then they can be more selective. Becomes more, in a sense, a buyer's market to some degree, I would think. Or I don't know. What do you think?
In the lower Main Street businesses, there are plenty to choose from, and usually in this size of business, you'll find they're fairly risky, and almost every business has something wrong with it. There are very few that you would consider like the perfect business. Mm-hmm. They all need something because, frankly, once a small business owner gets comfortable with his income and the state of his business, his priority shifts more to having a nice, comfortable life than it does to really pushing himself and striving to grow his business and make more money. As long as he's happy with what's going on, then all those things that he thought about doing at one time, they just keep getting put off and they never seem to get done. So when someone goes to buy a Main Street, lower Main Street business, they will usually find that these things may lack good books and records, which is where you can really help out. They may lack good marketing. Maybe the facility is getting run down and the owner hasn't noticed because it's slowly degraded around him, but everybody who walks in starts noticing all the dirt in the corner and the boxes that should be put away. And so there are always things that when you go to buy a Main Street business you see need to be fixed up. But still, when you do fix them up, the business usually does perform better. So there's a plentiful supply of lower Main Street businesses. Most all of them need some fixing up. None of them are perfect. When you get into the businesses that net $500,000 and up, especially the ones that net $1 million and up, you will find that there are not very many for sale at any one time because when they come on the market, they often sell very fast. And there are a lot fewer of those businesses to begin with anyway because most businesses are pretty small. Mm-hmm. For example, 1st of September, we listed a small manufacturing company that had earnings of $1.4 million, and it was highly organized. The owner was a fellow who had done a couple of startups in Silicon Valley, and he knew how to organize a company, and he started it as a hobby. But it turned out to be so successful that he decided, well, I better organize it so that I don't have to be there running it all the time. Mm-hmm. So he put a good management team in place. He put a good enterprise resource system in place with good accounting system and good manufacturing controls and planning and material control system. It was actually organized like a much larger company. Bottom line is, when we sold it, he hadn't even been there in a year and a half, and yet it was still netting $1.4 million and growing pretty well. We had 7 offers for this in the first 3 weeks, and it sold for $500,000 over asking price. So this is the kind of thing that happens when a very nice lower middle market company comes on the business. So if you're in the market for those sorts of businesses, you'd better be very prepared and ready to jump when a good one comes on the market.
Right. Now, again, if you're one of these people that's been working as an employee, and like you said, now you've saved some money, maybe you got some money from some stock options and so forth, you're thinking about buying one of these businesses. I'm throwing this out to you. That there's a saying that many business owners discover that they're a lousy boss and have a lousy employee.
I think that's true.
So, when you're thinking of buying, thinking of buying a business process, maybe you can comment about that a little bit.
Okay. It's true that knowing how to cook is not the same as knowing how to run a restaurant. That's for sure. And likewise, knowing how to sit at a computer and design things in an engineering department is definitely not the same as knowing how to run a manufacturing company. Having said that, there are a lot of jobs in industry that do prepare you to be an entrepreneur, especially in companies where the responsibility and authority for organizing and making profit is with you as the manager of a division or a department. So the primary skills people need to have are people skills, organization skills. They need to understand finances, and they need to be able to have good enough judgment to make decisions that result in growth and profit for their business. So a lot of the skills that they could learn in some corporate jobs are transferable into owning a small business. Others may have grown up in a small business. Maybe their parents had a small business.
Right.
Before they went into industry, they actually might have worked there. So there are lots of ways you can have the skills, but I think people should understand that the greatest example I think is knowing how to cook is not the same as knowing how to run a restaurant.
Okay. And there are entrepreneurial type programs at community colleges and other things. There are ways that you can study to prepare yourself. So
sure.
I'm just saying, don't walk in with blindfold on.
Yeah, in fact, if somebody would like to contact me, I have a list of resources I can email.
Okay.
Where you can learn all about entrepreneurship.
Okay. Compare buying a franchise with buying an independent business.
Okay. In an independent business, it's been designed, built, organized by the owner, the entrepreneur. And he has done that for his convenience in a way that works for him. And if you're going to buy that business, then you're going to have to be him. You're going to have to learn how to run it the way he runs it. You're going to have to know what he knows. He will probably give you some training included in the purchase of the business, but you're going to have to bring a lot to the party yourself. If you buy a franchise business, it's much less risky because the franchise has a proven business model that's been worked out and tested in dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of units. Like, for example, McDonald's has 32,000 units. Mm-hmm. When you have multiple units, it's easy to troubleshoot what's wrong with a single unit by comparing it to the other units. Franchises have operations manuals, details, and they have infrastructure and controls and software like a major corporation would have. And they have very thorough training. They also have oversight by regional managers, and they also have franchisee associations where the franchisees can compare notes. So you've got a lot of help, a lot of infrastructure, and much less risky to own a franchise. One thing that a franchise has that really makes it better than the independent is R&D. The franchises are continually monitoring what's going on in the marketplace and developing new products and new services to adapt to the changing environment. Whereas the typical small business owner gets comfortable and he just goes and plays golf instead of thinking what he needs to do to make his business stay current. So a great example, look at McDonald's. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was just hamburgers, French fries, Cokes, and shakes. Now you can go there, you get wraps and salads and all kinds of things and more healthy food. That's because McDonald's has a creative department, an R&D department, where they create new products and they test market them in certain areas, and they know if they're going to work before they roll them out corporate-wide. Mm-hmm. So that's a great example of one process that the franchise typically has that small independent businesses do not have. Franchises typically gross 50% more revenue per year than their independent counterparts do in the industry because of brand name recognition, consistency of delivery of product and service, and efficiencies, and things like cleanliness, the standards that are enforced by someone other than the business owner. So franchises can be a great way to segue from having a job to being self-employed or having a business rather. And you can also scale that up. There are a lot of companies out there that own anywhere from 20 to 150 fast food franchise units. Mm-hmm. I know of one guy that owns 185 Burger Kings. Wow. I know another one that owns 165 Carl's Jr.'s. So if you're a good operator, you can turn those into pretty large businesses.
Wow. Okay. So why should you consider working with a business broker when you're buying a business?
Well, just like running a business is a skill set and has a learning curve and a depth of knowledge, buying a business also does. There is a process. There are key bits of information to look for, and there are checks and balances that you need to be aware of. Also, a business broker can give advice about valuation and especially about the process and the things that you need to do as a buyer to make sure that you don't lose your money and make a bad investment and get harmed in the process and really come out worse for giving it a try. We have seen many examples of people who bought businesses without brokers that either grossly overpaid for them or bought businesses that really weren't worth anything, but they didn't know how to go about verifying the business performance. So a business broker can really help someone protect themselves in the process and make sure they get a business that's going to actually work for them.
Okay. Who usually pays the fee to the broker?
It's just like in selling homes. The seller usually signs a representation agreement with the broker, and he pays the broker a fee at closing.
Okay. So since it's the seller that pays the fee, does that create a conflict of interest as far as the buyer is concerned?
It absolutely does not. We have a fiduciary duty to the buyer as well as to the seller, and California law even deals with that, and it says the mere payment of a fee does not create any special obligation to favor one party or the other.
Okay. Who are some other people that should be at the table helping out?
To help the buyer?
Yeah.
Well, of course, he should have a really good CPA, and he should have a CPA who understands small and medium-sized businesses.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a mistake to pick a CPA who only deals with publicly traded companies,
Mm-hmm.
because the standards are different, the documents are different. A publicly traded company specialist CPA would have very different expectations, and he would probably reject every small business he came to if for no other reason than they're not going to have audited financials like he would expect. Mm-hmm. He should also have an attorney, and again, attorneys are specialists. You don't want to get a family law attorney. You want to get a business attorney, and especially a business attorney who has experience in small business equity ownership transactions. Mm-hmm. You also will need an insurance broker. You'll need to have not only general liability and property damage insurance, but you'll need to have workers' comp insurance. And there may be other special insurances you might want to get, like if you have a partner, you may want to get a buy-sell policy or something like that. Medical insurance for your employees. So an insurance broker is an important ally for you to have. And you may also want to use industry consultants. Depending on whether you're getting a franchise or not, you may want to talk to a bunch of the other franchisees that own for those franchises. Mm-hmm. And by the way, the federal law requires a franchise disclosure document be given to a buyer 10 days before he can even make an offer. Mm-hmm. That franchise disclosure document has the names, addresses, and phone numbers of every franchisee, and you are free to contact all of them and find out the real scoop.
Geez, McDonald's must have a huge book.
Well, it's probably digital.
Okay. Now, another one that I can think of is like inspection services.
Of course,
yeah.
you'll need building inspectors, right?
Right, and some types of businesses may have hazardous waste issues and things like that, so that's something
that's right.
to be
you
alert
might need
for.
that. And
that's what an attorney should be coaching you for.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you may also need an equipment appraiser.
Mm-hmm.
And if the business has a lot of specialized equipment, you might want to get an equipment inspection. Like if it's a precision machine shop, you need to make sure those machines will hold the tolerances that you're required to meet for your customers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what are the basic steps in buying a business?
Well, the first step is probably to sit down with your significant other and have a serious conversation about whether this is going to work for both of you. Uh-huh. We've seen several times when a guy comes in and says, "Oh, my wife's going to do whatever I say, don't worry about it," only to find out when he makes an offer that he can't ever get her to agree, and they never get a contract accepted because he didn't discuss it with her first. So, and vice versa. So I think it's very important that you talk with your spouse about that. You probably also ought to talk to your banker or an SBA lender and find out what you're qualified for. You should have some savings, and your lender and your broker can help you figure out how large a business you can buy and what's comfortable for you, and whether or not you can buy a business that's going to more than replace the income that you've enjoyed as an employee. So once you get your ducks in a row, then you need to start thinking about, well, what type of business, what area do I want to be? Do I want to move out of this area to some other area for some reason, or do I want to stay here? It's fairly unusual for people to move a long way to buy a small Main Street business. Mm-hmm. Usually people have roots and they want to stay near those roots. Mm-hmm. They have kids, and kids like going to the same school, and they have friends and so forth. So you probably want to make sure that you find a business that doesn't involve you commuting 2 hours each way through bad traffic.
Yeah. That gets old.
Yeah. More of the looking at yourself includes your skills. What education do you have? What special skills do you have? What sorts of jobs have you had? Do any of these jobs give you special qualifications for any particular industry or any particular business? Look at your own work ethic. You know, if you work for yourself, are you going to find that at 10 o'clock in the morning you're sitting home reading the newspaper in your robe every day, or are you going to be able to get up and get out that door and go to work and make that business perform? You know, because if you're the kind of guy that needs to have someone following you around with a cattle prod to get anything done, you shouldn't go into business.
Okay.
You have to have a lot of drive and initiative and desire and commitment to make a small business work, because the buck truly does stop at your desk.
Yes.
And if you're lucky, a whole lot of those bucks stop at your desk.
That's what you want.
That's right. So then there are plenty of opportunities to find businesses for sale. It's a good idea to connect with a business broker. You probably would like to talk to several business brokers until you find one that you feel compatible with, and one that you feel is interested in you and will make the time commitment to help you find that business and work through it. Once you start looking at businesses, generally you'll see some preliminary information. Then you'll be asked to sign a confidentiality agreement to get the confidential information where you know a lot of details about the business. Probably you will get to tour the business, maybe meet the owner. And after you've received that much information, you should be able to decide whether or not you want to write an offer. If you write an offer, the broker should help you do that. We have forms to do that have been through many, many thousands of transactions and take care of all the details that you need to address to make your offer complete. The broker will negotiate on your behalf with the seller, and if you can get your offer accepted, then you would probably simultaneously commence your due diligence examination of all the books and records, in which case he would definitely be calling Michael Gray to come help him do that. And also financing. It takes up to 6 weeks to get an SBA loan through, sometimes longer. And that's typically the longest item on the chart of activities as far as time goes. So you want to start that right away, even though you haven't completed your due diligence yet, just because the longer it takes to close, the higher the chance something can go wrong. Mm-hmm. Once you've completed your due diligence, you're happy with the books and records, then you probably want to talk to the landlord about getting the premises lease assigned. There may also be, instead of a lease, you may be buying the real estate along with it. You need to get into that and all of its disclosures and reports and so on as well, and financing that too. Once you're satisfied with your contingencies, then you'd be opening an escrow. The escrow holder would take care of the legal matters, document preparation, lien searches, all that sort of thing, publications of notices and recordings. And once the financing is done, the lease is done, then you can close the escrow and take over the business. Usually training begins at the day you take over ownership and possession of the business.
Okay. What are some considerations of financial analysis?
Well, certainly you want to understand what a business earns. It's very important to you because you're going to depend on that income to support your lifestyle, hopefully to make some savings, and any other financial goals that you may have. So, sadly, many small businesses don't have good books and records. And it's best to enlist the help of a financial professional like yourself to come in and help understand what's going on there. Sometimes if a business gets all of its income from checks, debit cards, credit cards, PayPal, there's a good record of all the revenue. In other businesses, there's a lot of cash, Sometimes, sadly, that cash does not make it onto the financial statements or the tax returns.
I didn't hear that.
And in that case, there really isn't much way that you're ever going to know what that business performance is. Because you certainly can't believe what a small business owner will tell you. Frankly, because honestly, he usually doesn't even know. He just stuffs money in his pockets and goes home. So that's one reason why I would encourage people to look for the little bit bigger, better business, because generally you're dealing with a better class of business owner, and the financial records have a much better chance of being accurate. I think one thing to consider is if there is a gross inaccuracy in the revenue, it's most likely underreported because people don't like to pay taxes. So if there's a way to keep some of the money from showing up on the top line, that's usually what happens. Although you have to look out for the other case where people have multiple businesses and they're taking money from one business and depositing it in the other to make it look better than it really is. So there are things to look out for. And when you look through the financials and look at the income, there is a standard for reporting income. And it's because, again, business owners don't like to pay taxes, so they typically run all sorts of personal expenses through their business to make the business show no profits, but they have the money which they have taken out in the form of various personal benefits. So the standard is called seller's discretionary earnings, and if anybody would like, I have a primer for small businesses called the Buyer Briefing, and it goes into everything we're talking about and a lot more, and I'd be happy to email it free if people would contact me.
Okay.
That's 28 pages.
Thank you, Greg. Okay. Well, maybe, I think we're pretty close to out of time, but why don't you take 30 seconds and maybe just give some final words of wisdom here.
Okay. The final words of wisdom, I think good advice for anyone thinking about buying a business is to really get an education. Talk to as many brokers, read as many articles and books as you can find. Talk to business owners that own businesses like the one that you'd like to own. Find out everything you can about financing, about the legal aspects of buying a business, and don't get excited and try to buy something before you really know what you're doing. Take your time. It's a big decision, and your future depends on making a good decision.
Okay. Thank you, Greg,
Well,
for joining me
Mike.
today. Folks, hope we've given you some good basic information, a start if you're thinking about going through this process. We'll see you next time on Financial Insider Weekly.